Greetings, and welcome to yet another edition of Sunday School Online. Glad you could join us. We're continuing our walk in the book Song of Songs or Song of Solomon. And before we begin, again, I want to issue a parental guidance warning. The material in this book is sensitive and delicate, and many in old Israel or Jewish tradition, you men were not allowed to read the book until age 30. So just know that going in. And yet it's a good book, and we will study it, but just as a fair warning up front. And so last week we looked at the beginning of the Song of Song, and it's a collection of love poems between an unknown man and an unknown woman, a shepherd and a shepherdess, per the descriptions of them in the early parts of the book. And many take this book as an allegory, as a love between God and Israel, if you're a Jew, or between Christ and the church, if you're a Christian. And that's how it's been interpreted widely throughout history. And yet we're not taking that approach. We're taking a more direct approach to its interpretation as a celebration of marriage and marital love, with all of the desire and sensuality that involves. And again, our main characters are the shepherd and the shepherdess, and the others will speak in chorus at various moments. And in our last lesson, the lovers yearned for one another. They sought after one another, and they found one another. And we left as she bid him to turn and flee. And now we pick it up in chapter 3, which we'll talk about it. But it begins, chapter 3, verse 1, begins, "On my bed by night I sought him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but found him not." So here she's in bed, and the best way to take this is that she's dreaming. She's in chapter 5, verse 3, it states that she is sleeping, but her heart is awake. And so many commentators take chapters 3 to the end of 5 or the beginning of 6 as one big dream sequence. And the text itself indicates this. She's in bed. In 5:3, she's asleep. There's a lot of discussion of awakening. Like, the refrain of the book is, "Do not awaken love until it pleases," which that occurs in 2:7, 3:5 in our text, and then next week's text in 8:4. There is something to this, and that she is dreaming and telling the girls to keep dreaming and not act until the time of their wedding comes, so that they find love. And so what happens next, further indication this is a dream, is something that probably would be rare to happen, if at all, because she goes about the city at night by herself and expects the watchman. So that alone is kind of unique. But then again, she asks the watchman of the city, "Have you seen him whom my soul loves?" Like they know who that is. So anyways, it's probably best to take this as a dream, though many don't. And that's okay. It's a very difficult book to interpret and get a real good grasp on. But she's dreaming and she seeks. Look at this in chapter 3. "I will rise now and go about the city in the streets and the squares. I will seek him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but found him not. The watchmen found me as they went about the city. Have you seen him whom my soul loves? Scarcely had I passed them when I found him whom my soul loves. I held him and would not let him go until I had brought him into my mother's house and into the chamber of her who conceived me. So 4 times she talks about seeking, sought. Oh, verse 1. I sought him whom my soul loves. I sought him but found him not. I will seek, I sought. So there's this searching, this seeking of love, of her lover. She wants to find him. And in the beginning of her dream, she cannot find him. And she wants to bring him to her family to probably gain their acceptance, for them to welcome him, to approve of him. And then, as I said, she adjures the daughters of Jerusalem not to stir up love until it awakens, or until it pleases. Not to awaken love until it pleases. And again, this is best seen as to take the correct steps in love. That there is a sensuality to be enjoyed, but in the proper context, which is marriage. And it's all given by God, the Creator. He designed it. He orchestrated it. He invented the male-female bodies and everything that goes with that. He invented the way to procreate, and he invented, and really we call it instituted, marriage. So these are all his ideas. And this book is a celebration of that. And these lovers are watching or seeking for one another because they desire this thing that God has given. But again, as she adjures the daughters of Jerusalem in the proper context. And that's so a key. Love and marriage and sex are all designed by God. They're meant to be enjoyed and sought after. But they're a little bit like fire, in that fire can bring life and cook food and provide heat, but it can also destroy if used improperly or not cared for properly. So, yeah, and we need to watch our own hearts in that. And this isn't really popular today. But we won't go on to all that. You know very well. But there's something better, and I think that's what's missing. We can condemn, and certainly it's right to say that adultery is wrong, and premarital sex is wrong. We can condemn those things, but what this book sets forth is a vision of what is right, of what's meant to be. And often that's what we're missing when we critique the culture or critique those who step outside the bounds. Often we only offer them the negative, we don't offer them the vision of what could be. And that's what this book offers. So then, in chapter 3, we see the arrival of Solomon. And again, if we take this as a dream, she's seeing this vision of Solomon arriving for his wedding. What is that coming up from the wilderness? Like columns of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and frankincense, with all the fragrant powders of a merchant. Behold, it is the litter of Solomon. Litter is like the couch or chair, portable chair. Around it are 60 mighty men, some of the mighty men of Israel. And she goes on to describe the elegance and brilliance and refined elements of all that he has that is marching on his wedding day. And she's like, daughters of Jerusalem, go see Solomon on his wedding day. And it's his grand procession. And he has 60 mighty men. In 2 Samuel, David is described as having 30 mighty men around him and his procession. So just as a comparison. And it is a grand and royal procession. Now, what is this doing in the book? Why is this there? Many take this as part of that. Since Solomon is the shepherd, this is the wedding day between her and Solomon. However, we don't see it that way. We see this as a dream, as a comparison, and that's what we have here. Some questions. Is this a comparison like in chapter 8? And in chapter 8, she says, Solomon has vineyards which bring 1,000 shekels of silver. But my vineyard I keep and I protect. And so she's saying, not all the money in the world could buy me, could buy my love, and what I have with my beloved, my lover, the shepherd, whom I have wed. I wouldn't trade it for the vineyards of Solomon. Kind of this comparison of, everybody would like that, but what she has, she values basically just as much as Solomon values his vineyards. Is that the comparison here? Like, Solomon may have this grand procession, but what I have is just as grand. It could be that. Is it hyperbole for what the lovers are experiencing? Is this an like what they're experiencing is best displayed as Solomon? Very similar, but is this an idealized view of the wedding day for which the lovers long? When like Solomon, her shepherd would be celebrated and paraded, and there would be all this ornamentation. Anyways, we don't know. We don't know what it's doing here, but those are some of the options of what's going on in that vision. So that's what she sees them. So now it's the man's turn to speak. But before we get to chapter 4, let's talk about her seeking and seeking and seeking for love. And there is this continual, where is he? I want to find him. And then they find each other. So there we see that love, especially marital love, romantic love, is a struggle. It is a worthy struggle. She can't rest until she finds her beloved. She is willing to struggle to seek him out. She doesn't quit when it gets difficult. When she can't find him, she continues on. And do we think like this? Do we expect love to be hard? Do we expect love to bring its own challenges? Are we willing to invest in love? Even, and maybe even especially, when it is difficult. And the vision of this book shows us that love, even romantic love between a man and a woman, are worth it. And then we have the ultimate example. God thought it was worth it. Because of his love for us, he sent his only son to die on our behalf. Not when it was difficult, when we were not reciprocating the love, when we were rebelling against him. And that should shape our marriages, that we don't treat our spouses well only when they treat us well. For then it will only spiral out of control to when we will never treat each other well. But rather, because Christ has treated us well, we treat our spouses well. And when it gets hard, we remember that it's worth it to fight through it, to struggle through to the end, to seek it, to value it, to pursue it, even when it is hard. Because it's worth it. Because that's what Christ did for us. Chapter 4. So they have, let's see. Back up to 3. So she finds him, okay? Now that she's found him, and in her dream brought him home, as it were, he responds. It's his turn to speak. And this is what I talk about. Many of the versions will have their own. This is not part of the text, but this is their heading to let you know that this is him talking. And the way they know it's him talking is because it's masculine singular words in the grammar of the Hebrew. Fun facts. Okay. And he begins, "Behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful. Your eyes are doves behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats leaping down the slopes of Gilead," and so forth and so on. He will continue describing her from head, not to toe, but her hair, her eyes, her neck, her cheeks, even her breasts. He will describe in praise and glory. He is describing her various features. And basically what he's saying is, I like all of you. I love all of you. There's not anything he doesn't like about her. And again, in 4:7, he says, "You are altogether beautiful, my love. There is no flaw in you." Now, 4:7 right here. Is that true? Is there no flaw in her? In some sense, yes. The way he values her, that it's like she has no flaw. But that's not the point of love poetry. It's to bring out the best, to bring a claim. But he loves all of her. And he is willing to tell her that. Now, if you really want to impress your wives, men, write down this list, write it down, and give it to her as a letter. And it will win her heart. Or don't, because it's kind of silly the way they talk to us, to our ears and sensibilities. These are more qualitative descriptors as opposed to visual descriptors. But nonetheless, he is praising her for her physical beauty and attraction. And we should, likewise, do that for our spouses. We should, men and women, tell them how they please us, how they are beautiful, both exterior and in character. We should let the natural inclination to praise them, to not in the sense that we praise God, but to tell of all the ways that they are beautiful. That's a natural thing to share that. And we should share that with them. We shouldn't lock it in. So let us be sharers of love. Love is meant to be expressed. The sharing of it is important and meaningful. So right now, I want you to turn to your spouse and tell them some ways that you think they are beautiful. I can wait, or you can pause, but it's important. It's important that we tell them how we love them in very specific ways, and the whole of them. And so he he praises her and describes her in various ways. And in 4:8, he says, "Come with me from Lebanon." He's calling her away from the wilderness, to leave the wilderness and dangerous place, which is basically to say a place not with him, to be with him. And he, in this section, calls her his bride. And this is the only section in the book where that occurs. And the man is captivated by her. Verse 9. You have captivated my heart, my sister, my bride. You have captivated my heart with one glance of your eyes. Oh, to be in love, and to know that when she glances his way, when she acknowledges him, when she gives him that look that says so much, that captivates him. And it's really neat to see that here. Just a glance of recognition or adoration from her captivates him. And in verses 12 through 15, she is compared to a garden. A garden locked is my sister, my bride. A spring locked, a fountain sealed. And then he talks about how her garden is full of all of these choicest fruits and spices and different collections of spices and scents used for various things. A garden, fountain well of living water and flowing streams from Lebanon. And so the woman is compared to a garden. And the ESV, this is what the ESV Study Bible says, that women were often compared to a garden, and this was to indicate their sexuality. That this was used frequently in ancient Near East poetry, writings. And so what we're about to read next, if you think about it like that, is very sensual. Very sensual. So we're just going to read it, and I'll let your imagination take you. So first he's saying in 4:16, "Awake, O north wind, O come, O south wind, blow upon my garden." Now she is his garden. "Let its spices flow." And so she says in return, "Let my beloved come to his garden and eat its choicest fruits." And then he's going to say, "I came to my garden, my sister, my bride. I gathered my myrrh with my spice. I ate my honeycomb with my honey. I drank my wine with my milk." And the others exclaim, "Eat, friends, drink, be drunk with love." To eat the fruits of the garden. Here's what most commentators agree on 5:1. 5:1 is a picture of the consummation of their love. Okay? Most commentators are on board with that. What they disagree on, one, is this a dream or is this depicting something that's happened? That's the first question we have to answer. And the second question is that the commentators disagree on are who are the shepherd and the shepherdess, which we've already covered that in the introduction. But is it Solomon? Is it the shepherd? There's various interpretive schemes there. But again, we're taking this as a dream, as them longing. This is the fulfillment of their longing, the culmination of their desire to be together. This is not actually happening. This is her dream of how it will go. So that's the route we're taking. in this study. But regardless, it is the enjoyment of one another as God intended that is it's being celebrated here. And 5:1, according to one commentator, is exactly in the middle of the book. There are 111 lines before and 111 lines after this verse. And so it's sort of the central focus of the book is that the culmination and consummation of love. And here it takes place in the dream, that this is the longing of her heart, what she dreams about. And again, the very next verse is in 5:2. This is just so you can see. Chapter 5, verse 2. I slept, but my heart was awake. She's asleep. She's dreaming. And, again, is this a new dream? Did the other one end somehow? Is this whatever? But again, I take it as this basically 3 through 5 are a dream. And so now she's dreaming again. And her beloved is knocking at her door. Before, when she dreamed, he was gone and she looked for him. Now she's dreaming and he is knocking at her door. And he's saying, open to me, so that my dove, my perfect one, for my head is wet with dew, my locks with the drop of the night. He's basically saying, I'm outside, I'm wet, let me in. And her response is this a tease? Is this her dream, her grogginess of being awakened by him? But realistically, she's giving these reasons why she can't let him in. I put off my garment. How could I put it on? I had bathed my feet. How could I soil them? Basically, she's saying, I took a bath and I've got on my pajamas. I can't let you in. And then, but he's like, well, he's going to try to get in anyways. And then finally she arose to open to her. And she opened to him. But my beloved had turned and gone. She sought him and found him not. So even though he was right there, in the dream, they couldn't be together. And so now she's going to chase him. But here the interaction with the watchman's a little different. The watchman found me as they went about in the city, and they beat me and bruised me, and they took away my veil. And so now that the watchmen have her, she cries out to the daughters of Jerusalem to find him. If you find my beloved, that you tell him, I am sick with love. And they give a response which is interesting. You would think they would say, sure thing, we'll do it. But here's how they respond. What is your beloved more than another beloved, O most beautiful among women? What is your beloved more than another beloved? And thus you adjure us. Basically, why should we look for him? There's, many men out there. Why don't we find him for someone else? Why is he so important? So now it's her turn to praise him. He had praised her. Now she's going to praise him. My beloved is radiant and ruddy, distinguished among 10,000. His head is the finest gold. His locks are wavy, black as a raven. His eyes are like doves beside streams of water, bathed in milk, sitting beside a full pool. And she is now praising him, his appearance, and his character. And again, it needs to be said. She's going to get it out. But here she's telling the daughters of Jerusalem why he's so important, especially to her. And one of the things she praises is his eyes. They're like doves, just like her eyes. Which is funny. I'm going to tell a story from when I was in middle school. We were standing in line, and with other students from my class, and one of them happened to be a girl, and she just innocently was totally just to make conversation while we waited in line. She says, "Stephen, you have really pretty blue eyes." And I was like, okay, whatever. And we were waiting actually to go in an auditorium to hear a talk about, we were going to hear a talk. And one of the things the lady said who talked, and she said, the girls, she was talking to girls, just because a boy says you have pretty eyes doesn't mean you have to go with him. You know, you don't have to be his girlfriend. And I turned to her and I said, hey, just because you say I have pretty eyes doesn't mean I have to go with you. So, being silly. But anyways, there is this need or this desire to be praised and to praise. And we need to be doing that to our spouses, to our beloveds. We need to not lose our longing and desire for them. But she's going to go on praising him and his appearance, but his mouth is most sweet. He is altogether desirable. So again, she loves all of him. This is my beloved, and this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. So she considers him more than her beloved, but her friend, her compatriot in life. And now they're going to respond. Where has your beloved gone, O most beautiful among women? Where has your beloved turned, that we may seek him with you? So now they're convinced, and they're going to go after him with her. They're going to help her find him. They're convinced of this. And so again, in this section, we see this seeking and finding, this desire to come together of the lovers to consummate their union, and that they're pouring out, they're springing up of their desire for one another to praise them, to compliment them, to speak the nice things about them. And so that's how this story goes. And I want to now take a time before we finish to comment on arranged marriages. Obviously, in biblical times, it was very common to have an arranged marriage, the purpose of which was not to necessarily impose your will as parents on the child, but rather as a clan, as a family, as a society, you had to look out for everyone. And so they would either a strategic alliance to where two clans could be friends, or economic alliances, any number of alliances where the two could join and be together. And so there was a lot of the community involved in that decision making. And so the couple may not have had the opportunity to even meet before their wedding day. I don't know how common it was, but certainly it happened. And they may not have had this romantic fire upon which to build their marriage. But here's the funny thing about arranged marriages, is that they have a pretty good success rate. In the sense that they don't get divorced and they grow old together. And so I'm not saying let's go back to arranged marriages, but what can we learn from arranged marriages? Is that love is to be cultivated. It can grow warmer and better over time. That when the couples who are in arranged marriages don't expect fireworks from the beginning, but rather they expect a life where they grow more and more and more in love with one another. And that sort of outlook on marriage, I think, is part of the reason why they last longer. And so we can at least learn that from arranged marriages. And I think maybe even part of the Song of Solomon is to say that there has to be the willingness of the participants in the union. That doesn't mean there can't be input from the community, but that and again, there are the bringing to the mother in chapter 8. They come to the family, and it's like they're seeking the approval of the family. So there is still this community element, even in the Song of Songs. But the lover's desire for one another is almost the epitome of what we think marriage should be now. Marriage now is viewed as when you find that person you can't live without. You have this romantic attraction for them. They're just the bee's knees. You marry them, and then that lasts forever. And what we forget is that love needs to be cultivated. It needs to be guarded. It needs to be sought after. It's not something that's just there and is this fountain flowing. It has to be worked for. They were willing to work for one another there, or in our book. And we need to have that view in marriage. So how are we seeking our wives? How are we growing our relationships? How are we saying our marriage is good now, but how can it be better? How can we cultivate it? Brooke and I, for our anniversary, actually went to a marriage retreat. Just to say, hey, we think our marriage is doing fine, but let's see if this sparks something and helps us to grow. We wanted to learn and grow from that. So that's one way. Reading books on marriage, going to marriage conferences, marriage retreats, finding a hobby together, something you all like to do together. Anyways, there's thousands of ways, but we still need to have that mindset that love can be cultivated. It can be grown. It can be sought after. And I'll say this, strong marriages are built, they aren't born. This desire displayed must continue for a lifetime. The desire they show for one another must continue for a lifetime. And their language suggests it in their view. And so I'll ask you, is love found or is it cultivated? And I think that can instruct us some on seeking and finding for love. And so love, marital love, is exclusive. What do I mean by that? Well, could you imagine that let's say in the next chapter, she starts saying these things about another man, or he starts saying these things about another woman? Well, that would cheapen it. It would make it seem gross. And so in that sense, love is exclusive. They love one another so much that all others are excluded. That's sort of what he means when he says she's a garden locked, is that she is for him only. Love is cultivated. It is also not easy or beautiful. It should be celebrated and sought after. A romantic love for another is intoxicating and lifelong. They dream of being together, but not until the time is right. And their love culminates in the consummation of it, and which we'll get to in chapter 8, the actual consummation, not just a hoped for or dreamed of consummation. And so they're longing for that ultimate show of love. It's not the only show of love, but it is that, again, consummating show of love. And so this book is a celebration of the God-given gift of marriage and sex and desire and passion in a relationship. And it puts it out there to say this is what could be. It's a vision for what could be. So as we study, keep that in mind. It is a beautiful and wonderful thing that God has given, and we need not shy away from it. We need not hide it, but rather celebrate it and talk about its goodness. And so I'll see you next week as we conclude the book of Song of Songs. Oh, and one announcement. At the end of this video, for those of you who have stuck around, we will resume or begin in-person Sunday school August 16th as we begin a new book of the Bible, the book, as we said, the book of Acts for this fall, I don't know what to call it, but semester. We will actually live stream Sunday school. Therefore, you can watch it either live on Sunday morning or, if you watch it live, you can interact and ask questions. Or you can also watch it recorded. And Lord willing, we're still trying to figure this out, but I think we're going to turn it into a podcast so that you can listen to the audio version of Sunday school to make it easier for you all to listen and engage. But that is August 16th. But next week, is that right? Or August 9th? We will conclude the Song of Songs. And so, until then, thank you.